In December 2014, I received a Facebook friend request from a guy called Meek who lives in Kendal, Cumbria. Now, when I looked at Eddie's Facebook profile, I realised that we had quite a few mutual friends, but I didn't really know him personally. But I knew we had similar interests, as in we both like to ride dirt bikes and we both like travelling. So I asked some of the guys close to me that knew Eddie and what he was like, and they all said that he was quite a cool guy. So based on that fact alone, it was friend request accepted. As the months passed by, I occasionally saw a post by Eddie, and I knew that he was planning a big adventure down under to Australia to take part in the Finke Desert Race. So at the end of June in 2015, when I heard that Eddie was back in the UK from his Australian adventure, I got in touch with him and I asked him what he was going to do with his video clips, what he had from his trip down under. And the simple answer was, he didn't know really what to do with them. He didn't know anything about editing or how to put them together in some sort of playable format. So I thought it'd be a nice idea to go up and see Eddie in Kendal, get the full lowdown on the Australian story and try and put a small film together for him. So in a windswept garage in Kendal in mid-August, this is Eddie's story. How did the Australian sort of thing come about? You know, with your first trip down
under? First of all, we booked in 2010 to go travelling. We bought a camper van when we touched down. The idea was to go up the east coast all the way to Cairns. There wasn't much of a plan after that. Basically, camped out one night. Another lad, an Aussie lad, turned up next to us, same as us, camping out. Got chatting. You know, laughs, beer, all that. 2 months down the line, we end up going back to his house and basing ourselves in Adelaide. So, and then the rest is history, really, with travelling Australia. And
so tell me about your friend that you met up with, Scotty. What's he like, Scotty?
Scotty, well, he's a typical Aussie. He likes his beer. He just likes to travel around. He's got a motorhome. Yeah, he's a good lad.
At what point did you decide that you were going to go back to Australia and do the thing?
I went back to Australia in 2014. I went out there travelling with Scotty again to his property, and I bought myself another dirt bike. I bought a KTM 250 2009. We went through travelling again through the rainforests, and we went to a spot called Manor Park, which is a big enduro track in the outback, and there's hundreds of kilometres of dirt, signposted tracks. So it's after that I thought, I've got a decent bike here. Thought about the Finke when I first went to Australia and bought my first bike, because I've heard all about it going through the desert, and I think that's what hooked me in the first place. The desert riding and the freedom you can get on a dirt bike. So after buying this bike last year, I thought, it's there now. I can prep it, I think, and I like entering these events. It seems to be a challenge for me. That I think of an idea and an event, and then I kind of go for it. It's just upping my challenge all the time.
Did you try and get any sponsorship back in the UK when you were?
I got a few local sponsorships. A few local lads, my mates, chucked in a few bits and bobs, and Martha catered at a local catering company. And well, if it wasn't for Scotty, I wouldn't be doing all this, because he's like welcomes me into his lifestyle. He's like a brother basically. So I go over there. I've got free accommodation. He's got the rig. He sponsors me that way. I bought my bike, so all I have to do really is fly out there. you know, a ticket, they can be quite pricey, but as far as the event goes, it's, you know, it's a similar price as what you pay to do Western or say Le Touquet or Dawn to Dusk. There was a bit more to think with the licences and insurance, and then obviously getting out there. When I touched down in Brisbane, I still had to go 3,000 kilometres from Brisbane to Alice Springs. So the Finke Desert Race, it starts from Alice Springs and it runs along the old Garn Railway to a place called the Finke, which is a Aborigine community, which is literally in the outback in the middle of nowhere. The entries came out in January for the Finke Desert Race. 9 o'clock, obviously there's a time difference, so 9 o'clock in the morning there is something, well, it's probably about midnight, something like that, so I'm sat at the laptop waiting for entries to open so I can do it online. Half an hour in, I put my entry in, half an hour in there was 300 competitors in that first half hour. In the hour, the entries were full. There were 640 competitors, bike competitors that had entered. So I'd managed to get a confirmation within that hour that I'd got an entry. So
you were lucky.
I was lucky, yeah. I was really pleased.
The next step, your bike was out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, as it stands, it was a KTM 250 XC 2-stroke. It wasn't set up for desert racing at all. I got in touch with the guy who bought the bike off. He gave me contacts for Brisbane KTM. Now Quinton, the mechanic there, he's well into his enduro. He's originally from South Africa. He's done the Roof of Africa quite a few times. So I had all my faith in where my bike was going. You know, I had confidence that they'd be able to set it up. He kept keeping me in touch with emails, pictures, you know, communicating that way rather than phone calls. But there were a few phone calls late at night.
So, what did you think when you got there and you actually saw the bike compared to when you'd last seen it?
Oh, when I first saw the bike, when I touched down in Brisbane, we basically went straight there within the hour, and it was sat there in the workshop, and I didn't recognise it as my bike. It was so well prepped. Put a graphics kit on it without me knowing, with my name on it and my number for the thing. And I was gobsmacked. I loved it.
I saw that. So,
yeah, I was like, yeah, this is gonna be, it's gonna be a good race with this bike. So I was over the moon. They did a fantastic job, and you know, they set it up so well. And basically, it was ready to pick up when I got there. Put in the trailer, and you know, that was it. We set off from Brisbane. Scotty driving with Christina, his partner. She was a chef in the family, do all the cooking for us. Scotty would do all the driving, I'd do all the riding. It took us, I'd say, 4.5 days to travel from Brisbane to Alice Springs, which was just shy of 3,000 kilometres, and they were full days driving. So we'd set off first thing in the morning on daylight. We had to be aware of the kangaroos at that time as well, because that's when they all come out to play on the road. We would stop at lunchtime. We'd probably have half an hour lunch, and then because the days it gets dark roughly about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So as soon as it gets dark, that's it. You park up. It's too dangerous to drive at dusk because of the kangaroos. There's just too many of them, and they jump out in front of you.
Is that when you came across the toilet, the roadside?
Yeah, oh. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's random on the Landsborough Highway. Once you get out of civilization, it gets very samey. So all day you can be just seeing trees, bushes, and just desert. So what these backpackers and travellers do, they spice it up a bit by putting shoes in trees, knickers and bras in trees. So all of a sudden you'll see a tree and it'll just be full of, you know, whatever. Then there was an outback toilet just sat there. So So, you know, it'd be rude not to use it, wouldn't it? So, so I gave it a go. So it's just all fun and giggles, really. So
what was it like seeing those big road trains?
the road trains.
Yeah, tell us about them. They're quite scary when they were coming past you.
Yeah, well, I mean, the road trains, when you're passing them, you know, from the other direction, there's 3 or 4 carriages long. You're going some as well. But it's even scarier when you're driving along and there's one right behind you, and then all of a sudden he comes to overtake you. And, you know, you look to your right and you're like, okay, you just see the nose of the truck. And then about 30 seconds later he's still overtaking you, trying to get his 4th trailer past. But thankfully the roads are that straight, you know, there's plenty of time to overtake. So
you've arrived at Alice Springs and then you've gone to obviously sign on.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of scrutineering on the bike and...
Yeah, so you have to register first, which is 3 or 4 days before, get your information pack, gives you all the details of where you need to be and what day, what time. Scrutineering is at the showgrounds. Now you go at your designated time, get it scrutineered, you leave your bike in Parc Fermé with the trophy trucks, the quads, and obviously the bikes. Now that turns into a show from 6 o'clock onwards. Food, displays, you get to see everyone's, you know, competition vehicle.
How did you prepare yourself physically for that type of event?
Obviously it's a bit different to UK riding from your normal enduros, but prior to doing the event we set off a couple of weeks from Brisbane to Alice, and I was just riding through the desert. Every possible chance I had, each day we'd stop off for a couple of hours and I'd have a ride. But I wasn't sure of the riding conditions, so I thought I was getting good practice where I was riding, but I soon found out when I did the you can do like a pre-run before the event starts, and when I did the pre-run I thought, flipping out, this is a lot different to what I'm used to, you know.
Yeah. So after you did your initial like practice run,
yeah,
with the terrain you were riding on, how did you feel physically then? Were you absolutely shattered and trained?
Well, that first time I went out by myself, I did about 30 kilometres, and I had to stop under a tree because it was really hot. So I stopped, took my helmet off, gave my head such a wobble, and thought, what the hell am I doing here? And then after about 20 minutes of stood under this tree watching other riders go past, I kind of, you know, I made sense of the kind of terrain I was riding on. Another couple of lads stopped and we had a chat, and they gave us a bit of heads up about how to ride and that. So I put a helmet back on and went back to the rig, 30k down the track. So after lunchtime you can run it the other way. So that was the time I clicked and I was like, I'm loving this now.
So at that point you thought it was possible?
Yeah, it was possible, because I mean I got the flow of the whoops, and when you get them right it feels so good to just glide the front wheel over the top and bounce. You know, you're bouncing over the whoops instead of riding in them. Yeah. You're kind of hopping above them, which makes life so much easier. But it's physically trying to hold onto your bike for the amount of time you need to glide over the top of the whoops. I think the only training that you can do for the Finke is actually to ride the Finke prior to the event.
Yeah.
As much as you can. That's the only training you can do.
Let's talk about Linden.
Yeah, basically I looked on the entry list for the Finke. I noticed that Lyndon Poskett was that he'd entered. Now I followed Lyndon with his travels, with races, and obviously with the Dakar. So I got in touch with him and said, you know, I see you doing the Finke. Me and you were the only UK entrants. You know, what are your plans? Because it's always good to make plans with your fella Brit. So he said what his plans were when he was coming. So I said, look, well I've booked a a hotel in Alice Springs, more than welcome to come and, you know, crash with us. So gave him a bed. He had travelled down from Darwin 2 days before the event. He'd done 1,600 kilometres on his bike through the day and through the night to get to Alice to make it for Scrutineering.
You've travelled on back of him somewhere, haven't you?
Yes.
What were all that about?
Well, because then he used the hotel as a base. We both used the hotel as a base. He gave Basil a good once over, which he was using to do the Finke on, which people could not believe. So basically, it was on the way to qualifying. The rig was full with all the stuff. So we thought, you know, I'll just go and have a. I'll go to qualifying in style. So I got in the back of Basil, and we drove through Alice Springs all the way to the qualifying. So
Scotty was at the camp to keep the rig.
Yeah, we'd hired a 4-wheel drive because to get to the Finke it was 200 kilometres on the dirt road. So we didn't think using the big bus was a good idea.
Yeah.
So we obviously everything into a 4-wheel drive and the trailer, and reduced the room. So we used Basil as a get-about. The qualifying is at Alice Springs Raceway. You set off in threes. It's an 8-kilometre lap, just one lap to get your time for your start of the first day. So we're lined up. It's our turn in the three. You're trying to judge the guy next to you to see what kind of competitor he is, and you know, see how well you're going to get off the line. It's a traffic light start, so that was it. Red, amber, go. Now mine was geared for, you know, the first and second day through the desert. It wasn't geared for a quick glass around a quick loop, you know. I didn't have this knowledge, but the guy next to me, both guys next to me, smoked me right off the line. They were both on 252 strokes in the same class, obviously. And as soon as they got off the line, they were straight in front, clouds of dust, 10mm stone chips just splattered right into my line of fire. Couldn't see a thing. Went into about the third or fourth corner, in their dust, overshot, straight through the tyres, and didn't have a clue where I was going, but luckily I managed to stay on the bike and survive. It was a case of surviving that qualifying. They say don't go mad on that qualifying because you obviously don't want to mess it up for the real race.
So overall, where did you come in on the qualifying?
Overall, mid-table, which I was quite happy with because I wasn't giving it my all, but also I didn't know what I was letting myself in for. I didn't want to come off. It was all an experience and I was just taking it in, for a finish.
The day of the first race then, on the actual start of the rally, what time did you leave?
Now they don't set you off all at once. They send the trophy trucks and the buggies and the cars, 4-wheel drive. They send all those guys off at dawn, 7 o'clock in the morning. Once they've cleared, got to Finke at the other end, then they send the bikes and the quads. So we as the bikes, we're racing with the quads. I was just after lunchtime, so just after 12. I was mid-table. They set you off in 10s. So you imagine 10 bikes all lined up in rows, and these rows, were as far as you can see. So there's 600 bikes worth. So you're just waiting for your time. As soon as that green light goes again, 10 bikes all set off, and that was it. That feeling of the first 100 metres of, this is it.
Adrenaline.
The adrenaline. You're trying to race to the first corner to get in front of the dust. The idea is that get as far front as you can so you're not in all the dust, and provide dust for everyone else so they can't get past you. So survived that first kilometre. That was it.
to get to the end of the first day?
It took me to get to Finke for the first day roughly 3 hours 40 minutes. Now, because there were so many entrants, they allowed 4.5 hours. Once 4.5 hours is up, that's a cut off.
And how did you feel after your first day? You know, were you physically fit up?
Yeah, I was worried that I was going to get cramped because I'm not used to standing on the bike for say 4 hours non-stop. So I was worried I was going to get cramped, but luckily I didn't. And when I got to Finke past that checker flag, I was so happy. It was, biggest grin on my face. And then I saw Lyndon there. He was waiting for us at the finish, and we're like, we've made it. We've made it to Finke. That's halfway. I mean, the adrenaline from racing was magic. But all the spectators from start to finish, and especially the first 2/3, to say it was in the middle of the desert, you've never seen so many spectators. Campfires, the lining, the track, there's poles, there's makeshift bars, there's anything and everything to make it the best atmosphere imaginable. Now, while we were doing the Finke on the first day, Scotty had to make his way down the Stuart Highway and then 200 kilometres down a dirt road in his 4-wheel drive and the trailer to set up camp. But to try and find your team in this situation with a low level thickness of dust and the sun was coming down was, it was a bit of a nightmare. We'd made friends with another group of lads, Scottish guy and a few Aussies. We'd stayed with them for a good hour and used them as a base. So then we got on Basel, not knowing where Scotty was, and the sun had come down. So Lyndon had obviously just done the first day as well on Basel. So the two's up again. So we're riding through this Mad Max scene on Basel in the sand, scouting, trying to look for our camp. Eventually, about 40 minutes later, we found him, and he'd done a beautiful setup on top of this nice sand dune overlooking the whole camp, just ready for a firework display. We had the campfire going. Tea, Christina had got tea all sorted, and it was a magical moment up on the sand dunes. It was brilliant.
Cool.
The following day, so we're just camping out in a sleeping bag in the sand dunes, under the stars. We were woken up by the noise of your V8. 7 o'clock in the morning, as the sun's coming up, the track was literally 100 metres away. 2 hours later, they all, went through, and it was time for us to get to Finke through the camp and to line up. Riders briefing. Again, all the riders there. There wasn't many which didn't fail to finish, so there was still, a good 500, and that was it. Again, line up in tens.
Any issues on your second day? Did you have any off?
I didn't know. I managed to keep, a nice, safe, enjoyable rhythm, which was still good going. But it's a case of it's not a case of getting a position. It's a case of finishing. So that's the goal, to finish. If you can walk away with what they call a survivor's spike, then you've done it. You've won in your own race. To come away with that. So I was quite pleased. So I had a big grin on my face all evening at the prize presentation. You had to go up on the stage for your survivor's peg. Lyndon got one too, so we were both happy men.
What then for the rest this adventure in Australia? What happened?
Well, that was it. It was over. We were in Alice Springs, 3,000 kilometres away from Brisbane, and it's like, well, now what do we do? From Alice, we went back to Brisbane. we killed our time by about a day to get back as soon as we can. We got back to Scotty's place, which was in Rainbow Beach, which is a beautiful place. And we thought we'd go take our motorbike over to Fraser Island, which is the world's largest sand island. So we packed our bikes with the swags, sleeping bags, a couple of beers, a bit of vodka, and went up the beach from Scotty's house, which is basically on the beach. Don't even touch the tarmac. 10k beach riding to the ferry, which is then 20 minutes across to Fraser Island. No tarmac whatsoever. We travelled around Fraser Island and camped for the night.
Dingoes into Fraser Island.
It is popular for its dingoes, yeah. You know, you don't mind them in the day. You know where they are. You know, you don't really approach them. They can attack. But at night time, you don't know where they are, but they know where you are. So, you know, you've got your campfire set up. Any food, you put out of reach. You kind of lock it up in your bag. We hung it up in a tree thinking they wouldn't get it. That morning, the dingoes have been. They're taking all our food out of the tree. God knows how they got it. There'd been footprints all the way around our little camp. I'd camped so close to my bike on one side, campfire on the other, a load of debris in front, just to, you know, because
keep them away.
Keep them away, yeah. But they'd been, and that morning, I'd just been down to the beach. I just came back to the camp. And there it was, a dingo, literally 10 metres away from me. So I kept still. It was, you know, that I don't think they want to attack you, but you've got to be wary of them. Yeah. So, it's a bit of hand on heart moment. So
how long did you spend on Fraser Island?
Just 2 days this time. I'd been across before in previous years, but 2 days. But that was 2 days of solid riding. Yeah. We'd hit the beach, seen all the tourist attractions on the beach, and then we headed inland to all the tracks, which are absolutely amazing trails.
Yeah. What did it feel like coming back to the UK?
It was alright, because at the end of the day, I know it's there next year, so you got to earn the pennies to be able to go out and play again.
Yeah, it's a memorable adventure.
It was, yeah, and there's, you know, it was just fantastic. It was everything that I'd imagined. But now, you know, it's over.
Yeah. Definitely considering going back next year.
Without a doubt, yeah. I'll do it again. Now I know what I'm up against. You know, different settings, the qualifying. Certainly a week's pre-run would be recommended to get the miles in on the whoops. Yeah, it's definitely. I'd recommend it to anyone to go out and do these crazy events. Yeah.
Back in the UK, what's next for Eddie Meek?
What's next? Well, I've just bought myself a new toy. It's a KTM 450 rally bike. For some reason, I'm always wanting to up the game. So now I've had my experience of enduro, you know, all the extremes, the beach races, the desert race. You know, I know what kind of riding I like. I like the adventure. I like the long days, the long hours, the terrain. So basically, I've got a rally bike, and I'm going to do a rally championship next year, and then who knows, you know. I could do with some sponsorship, I know that much. Couldn't we all?
Yeah, that's